Just over a year ago, I started at-home ketamine treatments for my depression and my anxiety, really out of pure desperation. And this is what happened. Going back in time a little bit to 2022, I had a major mental health crisis. I attempted to take my own life. I ended up in partial hospitalization, and I was on a lot of medications in an attempt to get my depression under control. Throughout the course of the next couple years, we did get my depression to a manageable place, I would say, but it always felt like it was kind of like bubbling under the surface. Now, fast forward to early 2024. I suddenly lost my steady income job that I had. I really felt like overall my career was in shambles, and my depression definitely was starting to break that surface, and I was falling back into a really dark place. When all of this stuff started happening in 2024, it was really overwhelming. I was struggling tremendously with my OCD. I could barely leave the house without essentially having a near panic attack. I had really bad symptoms of anxiety, so physical symptoms. I had terrible tremors. I was grinding my jaw when I was like awake. Like most people grind their jaw at night, but I was grinding it throughout the day when I was in like these tremendous moments of stress. And it was really making it hard to just go about life. So, really, despite all of the work that I had been doing since 2022, I was beginning to feel like I was drowning, and I didn't want to worry the people around me, but I didn't know how long I could keep pushing through. My boyfriend, who is now my fiance, had done some research on ketamine for depression and anxiety, and he was really strongly encouraging me to try it. But this was about 2023, and I was pretty resistant to it. I was scared of the idea of it, and so I didn't want to try it at first. But when everything started to really come to a head in 2024, I was pretty desperate, and we decided that I would go ahead and try ketamine treatments. Deciding to do these ketamine treatments was really a last ditch effort to find some relief. I just could not bear the thought of getting back to where I was in 2022, and I felt like it was happening. So I just decided to go all in and try it. I sat down and I filmed that video of my very first treatment, preparing and getting ready for it. And looking back at that video, I can see such pain. It actually makes me emotional now. Pain that I was in was absolutely written all over my face. And looking back and seeing that video now, I don't think I had any idea of how evident it was that I was struggling. I think that in my mind, I thought I was hiding it from people, but in reality, you could see it. Just after my first session, my depression began to lift in a pretty significant way that I had never experienced before. With each session, I really felt that the weight was being lifted, and it was absolutely incredible. I really felt like I could function again, that I could leave the house, I could socialize. Everything was feeling a little lighter. And really, despite my external circumstances that were happening, I still felt so hopeful and positive, and that's not something I've ever really been able to do in my life. I think that whenever I have these external circumstances going on, that it's always sent me into this depression, a deeper depression at that. I think that most of my life I've always been in a level of depression. I think I've struggled with depression my entire life. But when you add in external circumstances and difficult things in life, that's what would send me even deeper into those depressions. But these at-home sessions really came with its own set of struggles. Every day that I did these sessions, it basically ate up my entire day. I would spend the morning kind of physically and mentally preparing for my session, and then I would have the actual session itself and then recovery. Kind of the aftermath of these sessions was really difficult to manage. I would be nauseous most days, and I would really struggle to be able to do anything or just kind of like function. Can cause some bad dizziness after, so you can't really get up and move around without assistance for a little while after. As well, you've kind of put your brain through the ringer, and you don't want to be on your cell phone. You don't want to be doing any work, answering emails, taking calls, things like that after a session. So, really, every day that I did a session, it would be a wash. Additionally, because you're not processing things with a therapist after, because you're doing these sessions at home, I really think that I didn't see as big of a benefit as I could have potentially had. Now, I think that obviously the therapeutic effects of the ketamine are really helpful, and it definitely significantly helped with my depression and my anxiety, but you're really lacking the ability to kind of process a lot of the emotions and kind of like go through some of the thoughts or memories that you might have during the ketamine sessions. And I think that when you get into the complexities of a lot of people's depression and anxiety, you need to do that deeper work. The company that I went through does have an app that provides different like journal prompts and some reading that are supposed to kind of help you along the journey. But I think overall, I really needed the help of a licensed professional to process some of these deeper things that were going on under the surface of my depression, and I just think that I might have seen a better benefit. I started my treatments around February of 2024, but by September of 2024, I really wasn't seeing any continued improvement, and that's when I decided to stop doing my treatments. I will say that I did pretty well for a couple months. I would say maybe about 2 months after I ceased doing treatments, but slowly my depression and my anxiety started creeping back in. I definitely noticed that my skin picking started getting really bad around December of last year. Around January of this year is when I really started seeing my anxiety uptick pretty significantly. Leaving the house almost caused me complete panic attacks. My stomach would start to go in knots. My stomach would get really distended. I started getting like severe like upper like shoulder and like back pain. And then also whenever I was out, I was having really bad tremors and just really high anxiety. And although my depression was still much better than it was prior to starting the ketamine treatments, I did feel like it was starting to slip. I was starting to really feel the signs of my depression really starting to run the show again. I began EMDR therapy to start to address my PTSD, which I really think is feeding into a lot of my OCD and depression anxiety like symptoms. At this time, I am not on any medication to specifically address my depression or my anxiety or anything like that. And I've also been in talks with my psychiatrist about possibly trying out TMS treatments, but we're kind of holding off until we see how I do with my continued EMDR and therapy sessions. Here's kind of the overall pros of doing my at-home ketamine treatments. First of all, the difference of doing at-home ketamine treatments versus doing in-clinic ketamine treatments is massive. There was a much lower cost associated with doing at-home treatments versus having to go somewhere and do infusions or anything like that just in an in-person setting. I mentioned before that I was really struggling with my OCD and anxiety around leaving the house, and being able to do treatments at home made things tremendously easier. I'm not sure how manageable it would have been if I needed to leave the house to do sessions, because my anxiety would spike up so badly, and I would be struggling so much that I'm not sure if that would have impacted my overall benefit of like having that high anxiety going into the treatments. And yeah, just being able to do it from the comfort of my home just really helped a lot in terms of, keeping my anxiety as low as possible while doing the session. And quite possibly the biggest plus in doing ketamine treatments is that I felt relief very quickly. I definitely was in kind of a crisis mode when it came to my depression, and I was slipping into a place that would not be good. And within that first session, 2, 3 sessions, my depression was at a much more manageable place, and I was able to function and really start to address some things in my life. And that's not something I was able to do prior to doing the ketamine treatments. And again, I've tried so many medications over the years, and I've never been able to get relief that quickly like I was able to with the at home ketamine treatments. Now, for the cons, I really think that the ability to have a therapist to process your emotions after these sessions is really beneficial and helpful. And not having that available to me, I think in the end, didn't set me up for complete success. Also, the treatments taking up the entire day in terms of preparing the actual session itself and recovery, I think makes it really difficult to kind of go about life and get things done, especially in the situation where I was like really struggling with my career and work and having to carve out those 2 days that were just kind of a complete wash and a loss. I think just really makes things a little difficult. And this type of therapy is not generally covered by insurance. So you do have to pay out of pocket, and it can really be expensive. Even though the in-home treatments are less expensive than the clinic treatments, it's still expensive. This journey has been anything but linear, and I really am still trying to figure out what works best for me. The ketamine treatments definitely gave me a stepping stone out of crisis, but I'm finding that continued therapy with my EMDR and just getting a deeper understanding of my mental health and kind of the things behind it is really where I'm seeing the most progress. If you're struggling, please know that healing is not a one size fits all. If there's one thing that my story should show you, it's that you should always explore all of your options, speak to your mental health professional, and overall, just give yourself grace. Please always know that you are not alone in your struggles. Healing is always possible. It may not be linear, but it is possible. If you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, for listening, for being a part of this space and this larger conversation about mental health. I hope that you will subscribe and continue to follow along on this journey of my life and everything that comes with it. And if you feel so inclined to do so or feel comfortable to do so, I would love to hear from you. Drop me a comment, say hello, and let's continue to have this conversation and show up for one another.